So everybody, welcome again. And this is the picture that Lois sent out, taken around the back streets of a town called Saint Laurens in Gozo. A wonderful island. What really I love about this island is it's got some sort of a crossover between the Mediterranean and North African. There's a sort of Moorish feeling to the architecture in particular. A lot of these buildings are very square, and I don't know if anyone will remember back to their youth and Sunday schools and drawings that you do of Bethlehem and a place like that. The houses invariably seem to be square with the steps on the outside of the house, and so it is with a lot of these buildings in Gozo. I don't know whether this one still exists. I took the photograph some time ago, and of course, like anywhere else, there have been modernizations, but it appealed to me. I think primarily because of these shadows here cast by the palm trees. But there are some other really interesting values that we can play with here. The shadows that are contained, that are cast by the white building. There's looking into doorways, little holes in the walls. The very burnt, rustic feel that you get of the brickwork, and I think comes across quite well in this photograph. Everything is amplified in terms of the warmth of the image by the warm blue sky that we have here. And there's also a little conundrum I felt, and when I was wondering about whether to use this picture, was this amount of the foreground here. And I have a cunning plan really to try and not have that quite as invasive to the picture as possible. I liked it very much because of the light that catches the top of, particularly the top of the stone here, and that is set against the darkness at the base of the White House. So there are lots of interesting contrasts: light against dark, light against dark, and we've got dark against light, and those sorts of values I think are plentiful in this picture. It's just a matter now of thinking about the composition. And when I did a practice painting on this one, I found what I went for was actually leaving a lot of the stonework here, leaving a lot out, and really just making some marks which suggested that there was a considerable wall here, and so that's the sort of idea that I've got for dealing with this painting. Now, in terms of, I've looked at different ways of offsetting this White House, moving it to one side, moving it to the other, or having, in the end, I came down with my practice painting of having it sort of hey diddle diddle straight down the middle, pretty much in the middle of the picture, and that's what I will go with my composition. So when beginning a painting, and this painting, like the others that I've done, I will break into probably into definitely into four stages. You could say that I'm breaking it into 5 stages, and the first stage is this mental chat you're doing with yourself about the composition and why you might want to use a particular picture and how you might change certain aspects of it to make it work for you in the painting. So in a sense, you could call that the first stage, but I'll lump that all together with The first stage being making a drawing, and then I will discuss the other three stages as we move on after that. So I need now to shift this out of the way and make a drawing. I will probably press on my pencil a little harder than I might normally do, so that I know that over the internet you can see the marks that I'm making. Okay, here we go. I've got my board on a slight slope, sloping downwards towards me, and I'm using a soft, a 4B pencil. Okay, I did say that I thought that this might be the more simple of the three paintings for this block of sun and shadows that we've been doing. I'm sure, I think it's definitely more simple than last week's, which involved quite a lot of movement and figures. And here we have, a bit like the Monte dei Bianchi scene, we have a sort of fairly sleepy, almost midday-ish, looking at the shadows view around the back of some houses. Okay, so I'm going to make my marks now. Where I talked about having, if I make the White House quite large, I think, because that's going to be the dominant thing. And probably going to be what I'm thinking of. I'm hoping these lines will show up all right. Interesting thing with these Gosseton buildings, and on a number of occasions we've been lucky enough to be invited inside them because of our friends, and there are a lot of people that live there. They're all pretty rough looking on the outside. There's nothing terribly attractive about them on the outside, but inside, invariably, they're just fantastic. Whether that's because our friends have a lot of wealthy friends, I don't know, but there's a big contrast, and you often see that. I know, going around Morocco and Marrakesh and places like that, the houses look pretty rough on the outside, and inside things are wonderful. So I'm taking my my house, the line of the stone wall is going to be something like that. I've just made a very light mark there, and let's put in some other detail. I have shifted the White House slightly over to the right, as it happens. So we put a few buildings. The buildings are very block-like in Gozo, as I was discussing earlier. So we'll have a I think what's important for me, really, more important than anything else, is establishing where the buildings break the sky. Let's put a house in here, because I'm going to be bringing this, when I start the painting, I'm going to be bringing the sky down to the buildings. And for this particular painting, I'm quite keen that the sky doesn't bleed into the buildings too much, because that will help to keep everything really warm. Okay, let's put a so I've moved the building over this side of my composition a bit, so I've got some more work here. Now, just before I finish off on this, I think you can work this however you wish. You can compose this however you wish, but also you can paint however you like. In terms of going along with me. I mean, if you want to wait till I finish and then do your painting, that's absolutely fine. Or if you want to see what I'm doing and get the feel for it and then paint along with me, that's absolutely fine. I'll leave it entirely up to you. However you feel, whatever you feel you want to do, you're confident about. Let's put that's up to you. And I don't need to put details like doors in. I think that's really, or windows or any of that sort of stuff. You know, put this window in. So we've got a window there, and I might stick another window in there. That's really all of these houses have their own water butts on top. Let's put a water butt there. And I think what I'll do is I'll bring that wall a little bit at an angle there, just to save everything being too horizontal and vertical. I'll do that, so it's running down there a little bit. That's my drawing. That's as far as I'm going with the drawing. Just I talked about the composition, talked about what I wanted to possibly get out of the picture, where I might place this White House, and then made my drawings and marks like that. And so that's, for me, that's the first stage of watercolor painting. I'm going to move on now and move to what I'd call the second stage, which is putting down the light wash. Unless I feel I very much want to keep the paper as it is, the white of the paper, I will attempt in this one to cover everything with some form of paint, some sort of light paint, and let that dry before we go on to the third stage. But in this one, the idea is that we're putting down the light colors, and a lot of the colors that go down now will be the colors that will show up in the finished painting as much as possible. The more I can do that, the lighter and looser the painting will seem, especially for the sky. I'll try to not play around with the sky more. So the sky, whatever I put down now, will be how it's going to be. I may tinker a little bit with some of the wash after I've done the wash, but for the moment, I'm just putting down the light colors. I'm not putting down any details. I'm not putting down any details of stones or palm trees or whatever else, doors and things like that. That can all follow later on. Okay, so for this, I'm going to use this mop brush. I think Lois has sent out to you a couple of pictures of the brushes that I'm using. This is a 1-inch squirrel hair brush. It's very bendy and floppy. It holds lots of water, and importantly, it comes to a good point when it's got water in it as well. So it's a really nice brush. I have a not dissimilar brush here, another squirrel hair mop brush, which does the same sort of thing. It's just smaller, that's all. But this is the one I'm going to use to put down my wash of colors that I've got here. Now, I talked about this being a warm sky, and for that, I've got 3 blues. Let's get this. I've got 3 blues that I have up my sleeve for the sky here. This is ultramarine blue, which I use a lot of. This is manganese blue, which is a fairly new blue to me. It's specifically there because it is a cooler, lighter blue than this warmer, redder blue, which is ultramarine blue. But lots of other colors would do the job. The color I have used mostly for years is cerulean blue, and I may well find myself going back to it. It's just that manganese is more transparent than cerulean. And then I've got a blue here, which is a semi-transparent color, which is cobalt. So I'm going to use this warm blue, French ultramarine blue, for my sky, and I'm going to bring it down to the buildings. And I need a little bit of space. So all these paints are artists' quality as opposed to students' quality paints. Picking up a lot of water here, and I'll probably have the sky just a tad bluer over to my right of the picture. So I'm taking this down to these buildings, which is what I mentioned I'd do earlier. Using even more water over to this side where I will want my sky to be a little bit lighter. Watercolors always dry lighter than they appear when you first put them on. So however dark you think it's going to be lighter than that. And my board is on the slope, as I mentioned, so very slightly the water will be draining down there. Now, if I wanted to put any clouds in, there are clouds in the photograph. I don't want to maybe just make some marks there and see. I want this to be a good blue sky. Okay. Leave that to sort itself out and paint its way around a little bit. Now I'm going to put in some light colors here with, as I said, almost no detail as such, but it's the underlying light colors. And I'm going to use raw sienna for this, but I want to make sure that this white building, the White House, is going to be lighter than everything else. I don't want it to be the white of the paper. I want it to have some of the warmth of this raw sienna that I've got here. You could use yellow ochre very successfully for this. Raw sienna is ever so slightly a warmer color, but you could use that. So I'm going to take this up to the edge of the buildings, and let's just make that lots of water at this stage. At the moment, this is all raw sienna. And I'm covering it. Let's put some water on the White House. That bring down. this area down here, the foreground, the stone wall that I spoke of, I'm happy to. I'm not going to make it a complete stone wall here. I'm just going to do bits of it, and I'm happy to have dry brush marks involved in that. So I don't feel I need to cover all of that completely. I'm going to just remove some of this in the White House, I think. Just not all of it is dead. It's still got a fair amount of the raw sienna on it, but it is a lighter espresso. Now, all of this is wet. I'm not going to do anything else with the sky. I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to just bring in some ideas of other colors here into this wet surface. So I can afford to, when I'm adding colors here, have them a little bit dry. And for instance, I think what I'll do is I'll pick up some much stronger, that is without water, raw sienna, and I'm just going to paint some of it in there. And I'll go to some burnt sienna here and just add a bit of these are old stone walls, and they can take quite a bit of playing around with like that. Let's make this one a slightly redder one, like so. I'll make that a bit lighter, that building. And I've got some burnt sienna, a burnt umber that I've got here, just a little bit, and I think I'll just add that to a bit of dark. I don't want it to be as dark as that, but it's fine, just a bit there.
What was the colour before the burnt umber, please, Mike?
Burnt sienna I use first of all. It's a sort of warm, ready brown colour. I was just putting some of that on, and now I'm just coming away from it being absolutely clinically flat burnt raw sienna that I had on it here. Now I just want to know what I'm going to do here. So I think I will go back to my burnt sienna. This is wet still, and I talked about the light that's going along the top of the stone walls, so I just thought I'd shift a bit of the colours that's building up there. Just some of this on here, and I don't want to flood this with paint. I think I mentioned, because I'm probably not going to paint all of it. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that, but we'll just see. So I'm adding in some colours here. Whatever I put in is going to be a stronger colour than a drier colour than I have got down, because I've got my water on the paper. That's fine. I'm using the water that's on the paper to help this all blend itself in, and leave this for as long as possible to dry. Yeah, I think want to do any more? No, I think that's where I'm going with this. Yeah, so that was the second stage. The whole, I think I pretty much made the whole of the paper wet at some. Oh, I'll just this water tower here. Just bring some raw sienna onto that and leave that there. That's reflecting something of the warmth, and it is very reflective, but we'll deal with that later on. So the second stage is wet. Keep it wet. Take out some of that color if you want to take it out. Add in other colors, but if you're going to add it in, add a drier color into it a little bit and let it just paint itself. If you put a wet color in, you'll not that there's a particular problem with this, but you'll get all these cauliflowers appearing. That's not necessarily a problem, but that's what will likely happen if you do that.
Someone's asking, Mike, how do you stop it bleeding into the sky?
Stop what bleeding? And well, it's bled in a couple of places here. I'm not worried about it. If you wanted to, you could remove it with putting a brush there, just to, if the paint's coming down like this, just to pick up the paint and stop it bleeding, or you could get a tissue and just remove it a bit and come back and do some more. But it's bled in a few places here, but I'm not fussed about that. That will all be part of the painting eventually. The other way of doing it, of course, is to turn your picture this way around so that the paint's draining away from it, which is an option, of course. So this third stage of the watercolor painting is where we're going to put on darker colors, probably add colors in there that will be useful, the reds of flowers or the greens of some of the bushes and trees and things that I might add on here. And we will also bring into this shadows. The shadows I spoke of that come here from the palm trees, as well as shadows that come onto other parts of the buildings. Leaving all of that, leaving for the last stage, which will be absolute details and usually much darker colors. Okay, so I will work as much as I can from the top downwards, so that I don't end up smudging it, if I can help that, although once I get going I do tend to move around a bit. But I'm wanting to bring in some sort of local colours here. All right, I've spoken about these two brushes. I think I'll use this brush, and if I end up using either of these two brushes, I'll tell you about it as I'm doing it. So I'm going to use that. And I'm wanting to put in shadows here and some other sorts of details. So I think what I'll do is I'll bring in some of in this white building, it's got some brickwork showing. This little bit here has got some brickwork showing, and wherever else I think that it might be useful just to add some idea of stonework, not brickwork, stonework. This stone, by the way, in the main, is all quarried in Gozo, and it's cut out by saws. It's very soft and it suffers greatly in the wind. And if you look closely at the picture of for instance, the stone wall down here, you'll see that the stone is quite pitted, and it's because it is so soft. Right, so I'll you can see my colours. Yeah, let's work on bringing something of some detail to the stones that are showing up in the building. I've gone back to raw sienna here, and what I'll also add some burnt umber. So I've got some raw sienna on the go and some burnt umber here, and let's just put in some. I think I quite like the idea of showing something of the mortar that's going here, but I don't. The first painting we ever did was a sunlit door, and we spent quite a lot of time there, dealing with all the stonework and everything. And I said at the time this was going to be quite a nerdy sort of painting, and I don't want this one. I want this one to be a bit looser here. So that will dry lighter, but so that they're not all exactly the same colors, I'll just bring in, let's get a little bit of blue. I've just picked up a little bit of blue that I saw lying around in a bit of this blue maybe. Again, I don't want to add too much water to this. And I'm just to mess up these. So I'm leaping around, picking up one or two colors, burnt sienna, a bit of blue, just to add a bit of interest to. Okay, those stones, that will do fine for the moment. Let that work its way. I don't want to bring any more in. I don't want to get too. No, that's not strong enough. I won't even bother with details here. I'll just put some marks here. Okay. Now I'm not sure do I want to put too much information in here? Let's just add one or two bits. Just grey some of these little things down here. You can do as much of this as you like. I want to do as little as I think I can get away with. What I'm more interested in doing is putting something into this space. Now, because I've decided to run this down a bit, I feel I need to put something in there. I'm going to put a bush in there. So if I let's try some of this lemon yellow with a bit of cobalt blue, lemon yellow. It's given me quite a bright green, so I think I'll add some ultramarine to that. And I'm going to have a door here. Let's just put a what might be a bush here, something like that here, and maybe another one there. This is too weak, this paint, so let's make it a bit stronger. It won't, when it dries, it won't stand up. So I'll make it stronger. There's some sort of bushes that are going to be. That might be quite interesting because there's going to be a shadow coming across here, and that will come out of the shadow a little bit here. When you're getting to the edges of a painting, you can almost not worry too much about the detail, if at all possible. We're trying to get the focus. Any detail sort of wants to be around about here, and if you're taking detail right up to the edge here, so I'm just wondering what to do about. I just put a bit more of that in there. Yeah. Right. Let's move on. To the.
I was asking yellow, cobalt, and.
Yeah, I use lemon yellow and some cobalt blue. I then found that that was a little bit too light for me, so I added a bit of ultramarine blue into it, just to make the green a little bit darker. Yeah, just a little bit. You must remember that these colors are going over the raw sienna, so you're not getting exactly the color you mix in your palette. You're getting what happens when the translucent color goes over another color. And I just felt they needed to be a little bit darker there. In fact, because the sun's coming down this way, this sort of way here, not directly overhead, but this way, you're going to find that this is going to be the lightest part of this bush, and this will be darker at the back, and we'll worry about that in a moment. So I'm going to turn my attention to the White House, and there are some stones appearing here, but let's just go back to my raw sienna and add a bit of brown to it, a little bit of blue. Okay, and see if this might be a bit too dark. Well, in fact, it will be a bit too dark, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just put it on all the same, just a few. So I'm using the pointy bit of my mop brush, bringing some of these marks here, which are suggesting some brickwork. It's still a bit damp. And what I'm going to do is, I don't want them leaping out at me too much. I'm just going to touch them off there a little bit. Let's add a bit more blue to a couple of these. Right. Probably be enough. Okay, that's what I need there. Let's see what we can do on these buildings. Okay, I don't want to get involved in too much detail. I think we've got more than enough detail here. So I think I'll I've gone to my burnt umber and you see that, yeah, you can see the burnt umber mix. I'm going to add a bit of French blue to it, graze it down, and a bit more than that. I'm using it almost dry, just bring in some marks here. I think when we did the painting of the washing hanging down, we were adding patina, if you like, to some of the walls that we were dealing with. Right. Okay, let's put some. These. This plant here is known in Gozo as prickly pear, as prickly pears, and they make a liqueur out of it. Everywhere, it grows everywhere on the hedges and so forth. And the actual fruit, it's possible to eat inside the fruit, as I'm sure many of you know, but it's really uncomfortable and hairy. So I'm going to put, I'm just going to build a little extra wall up here, I think. Yeah. And bring some of this prickly pears in. So let's try a color. What about this color? I'm using Aurelian and what happens? I can't remember what it is. What happens if I put cobalt with it? It goes quite a viridian. The color's quite viridian then. Let's just try. Putting some of that there. Okay, so I'm not going to try and paint all the prickly pears in there. We'll just pop that in there for the moment. And I want to bring in one or two other little bits of colors. Do something with this window. I'll go to my burnt sienna for that. And we'll do for that for the moment. And I don't know whether we're going to be able to see much of that window when. Okay, that'll do for that window. And right, let's bring some red into the painting. There is red down here in front of the White House. So I'm mixing. I've got this color is vermilion, but it could be cadmium red, it could be Windsor red, or something like that. And pop that in. A little bit of red there might be quite useful. And a little bit of red there. I feel I want something, a good strong blue. I'm going to my French ultramarine. I have no idea what this is. I just felt I wanted to put some blue in. Could be a bucket or something, but something there that might be quite useful. And whatever is growing out of the wall here is pretty dried off. So I'll put something green in and then I'll grey it down a bit. Let's go back to the sort of colour I mixed, which was this colour, which is it's called Aurelian yellow, but cadmium yellow does the same job. Cadmium is a little more opaque than this, but it does a good job. And I'll bring some cobalt in that and make a green. That's you see, that's quite a viridiny sort of green, but quite what it's going to look like when it goes on here. Let's put it on and see. So I'm going to put something here that's maybe a bit light, and we'll pop something else going on here. I'll add a little bit of raw sienna to it, I think. And see what happens with that. And maybe something there, I'll add some blue to that. Let's just see what happens. It'll sort of paint itself off. All right. Back to all of that a little later on. Do I need to do anything here? Yeah, I think I'm having added this little bit in here. I think what I'll do is I'll come back to my green. And this will be showing above the stone wall. Gives me some things of interest that are going on there. Okay. Right, that's lots of little things of interest that are happening up there. I just do something on these two palm trees now. I'm going to put something of the two palm trees got here, this tall one, this small one here, and these shadows, as well as other little shadows that are being cast by the building, and even under some of the stonework here. And something that's going on in the wall as well. Okay, I'll start off still using this smaller, my mop brushes, but at some stage I may launch into using the next brush down is this dagger or sword brush, which has got a long floppy point, holds water, long floppy point, and you can do two things with this. You can make some very fine lines, or you can make some really strange lines that you couldn't possibly predict. So that's an interesting brush. And this one, the rigger, which this is a squirrel here, I think. I'm not sure it isn't a sable, in fact, because I've had a long time. I got it from Rosemary many years ago. This one, I have no idea where I got it. It's a synthetic rigger. You get them all over. They're great for using, getting very fine lines, and you can do some amazing things by using the brush on its side, as indeed can you with all brushes, using them on the side. So I think these are the three brushes that I'm going to be involved with. So I'm going to start off with this smaller of my mop brushes, and I want to put down something of the green that's in the palm trees something of the brown trunk, and then move into my shadows as quickly as I can. So the green is going to be, the green's going to go on a lighter color here. So it's going to, even if I use this green, it's going to appear different. But it's just going for my Aurelian, and I'm putting this French blue on it. I'll make that, and I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna to that, just a little bit of red, just to, so it isn't too violently green. We'll see how that goes. So I use the Aurelian or cadmium yellow. I've brought in some French ultramarine. I thought maybe that was a little bit too bright, and so I've just graded down or with a little bit of red. The red that's in the burnt sienna here. Let's see, and I'm wanting to use the paint quite thickly and make so that I've got the point here, and make the pointy marks of this sort of thing. See if I can do this with and get the points working, so as they go out, they become finer. If you're finding this a bit tricky with a brush like this, then you can go to one of another brush, not dissimilar to the ones that I was talking about earlier. Let's just bring in this one. This is a more stumpy job down the bottom, and he comes. Paint still wet. I'm going to be bringing dark colors onto this, so this isn't all the palm tree. Just let's see if I can. See if I switch over to my rigger now, I can get finer lines. Which maybe is not a bad thing. I've used up that paint, so let's just mix some more. Quite dry in your brush though, a little bit of that red. Let's just see what happens here. Let's switch now to mixing a brown. I'll burnt sienna, maybe add some burnt umber to it, and put in something of the stumps. Stumpy little job here. This one. So make sure you're leaving plenty of air around all the marks you're making here. We've got darker bits to come in. We've got shadows to come in as well. Put a dollop of that. That can work its way down there. Can work its way down. Let's want some here. Let's bring in some more brown. I think that's working quite well, that brown. So I'm just going back to my browns here, and there's a little bit of red there. I'll leave that because that could be quite nice coming through. Just bring in some okay, so let's turn our attention now to just having made something of those palm trees. I'm going to start to bring in some shadows. Get myself a couple of bowls, and I'm going to bring the shadow in here first because it might even mix in with some of that paint. So ultramarine blue and a little bit of this red. Now, if you put too much in, as I've done there, it's going to, I want it to be quite blue. I'm adding more blue. And let's just see. Okay, that's nice blue. I'm using my mop brush. As you move around, it's quite nice to have little gaps that are appearing there. Let's see if we can put a few in there. I've got a window. Let's just, we'll come back to that in a moment. That's the shadow that's coming off the window. Now the shadows down here are darker than the shadows that are happening here. So what I'm going to do is pick up my rigger and put a bit of water with the shadow and take it down here. It will start painting itself in a moment. Let's just, you can have hours of fun just working out where your shadows are going here. Let's just take them right down to the bottom. Make that a bit darker. As the shadows go away, they'll obviously get lighter. So if you're painting at this stage and you're painting shadows, that's just fine. I think it's quite useful to have the shadows dark and working their way down lighter here. But I'm going to carry on with the shadows now. I need to mix some more. Go back to my French ultramarine blue. I'll put in a bit of that red again. No, in fact I won't. I'll add a bit of burnt sienna. So I've ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, so it's not quite as blue, and the light's coming down from here, so we can put some shadow on the that window. There's a sort of parapet which this one, I don't know, this probably get lost, this one. Right, try not to smudge this one. I've just put a few little marks in. I'm using my rigger brush. If you're making lines of things, it's quite a good idea to have a sort of lost and found approach to it, where you're not necessarily having complete lines all the time. You're breaking them up a little bit. Let's just and if you want your shadows to go a bit lighter, just I'm just going to some of these stones that I've put in here, and bearing in mind that the light's coming down this way, I'll make one or two marks, but I've watered down my shadow quite a bit, really. I'll even use my finger to not have it quite so dark. It's going to be a good lighthouse, this. Right, and now I will work across here, building shadows in and here before we end up with the details. Let's just see if I can put one or two little details. Just okay. Mix up a little bit more shadow. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Not too much out, otherwise it goes too brown. Let's just keep it as blue as we can. And put in some shadow here down the side of this water pot.
Someone's asking what the shadow colours are, Mike.
So I used deliberately one here, which was ultramarine blue with a little bit of red in. It could have been burnt sienna, but I put just a tiny bit of red in, just to keep it. I wanted this blue because I said right at the start, one of the things that attracted me about this view was the shadows that came down on this white house. And they look different from the shadows anywhere else. But in Maine, I've used a ultramarine blue and a burnt sienna. Yeah, you're not able to see that. Let me just move that. Yeah, and a burnt sienna. With that, not too much of the brown burnt sienna, otherwise it'll go too brown. So if there is too much, just add some more blue to it. And I've got quite a thick mixture here, which I'm prepared to thin down with water if I need to do so. Let's just see how it goes from here. So I've got a shadow that comes down here, which pushes this bit of the building out nicely. So let's, using my mop brush, shows that bit of the building off. It will dry lighter, this shadow, so that's right. Let's put something in here. I'm not quite sure. There's some steps there, but I won't get to. I'll just put another bit of shadow. There's some steps, I think. So if I can leave little gaps, that's no bad thing on that. I'll take some of the marks here. Let's put just popping something in here, doorway. I'm trying to make sure that this part of the wall stands out by putting some sort of darkness around. I think that's a cast shadow. We'll do something with that a little bit later on. So I'm coming down with the cast shadow that comes down here. Come down to, and I mentioned this bush which standing in front of the cast shadow, so we can and out of that shadow, now we're getting a little bit closer, I can make one or two little marks suggesting stonework. I'm going to put a door there shortly. Okay, I don't want to get too bogged down here. Any lines you put in, try and make them sort of fleeting and as if they're finding themselves and losing themselves from time to time. The shadows that on this tree are a little more broken up, and similarly on this one here. I'm just using my finger occasionally just to soften and break up the paintwork. All right. I think I'll change the shape of this and make that. And more shadow. I'm going to move over here now and then come down and deal with the foreground. So I've gone back to French blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, and let's right, what are we going to do here? Just sort of just get that tree to stand out a little bit as if there's a shadow that's been cast there. The rigger brush I'm tending to use and making marks. This is this wall that's in front of what's going on here. So let's I'm going to bring some more of the palm tree over that, I think. Right. On top of all these houses in Gozo, they've got all sorts of stuff containing water, heating water. They seem to keep a lot of their rubbish on top of the buildings as well. So don't feel you can't put something in. I don't know what that is, but it's just to show the difference between these two buildings. Right. Something happening there. We'll come back to all of that. Let's have a look at the foreground, the all the stonework here. Right, now this is where I think we try not to get too bogged down. I'm just thinning my shadow down a little bit here, and you can, if you like, draw these stones up, but I think I'll just go along with them and make them up a little bit as I go along. So there's a sort of we've got these shadows, which here will dry lighter, and I will bring in little touches of dark to them and make them. It'll make them seem even lighter. I mean, there's nothing. These aren't engineered bricks, okay? So we don't need to feel that we've got to get them exactly right, and exactly where I'm going to stop, I'm not quite sure. Let's just put in some. I do want these ones at the top to help to throw us in front of the White House. So they've got all sorts of shapes here. There's some which are sort of very regular shapes along here. So kind of making up the wall as I go along, and then I can add to it a bit when I come doing some darker work. So this is all, in fact, part of the third stage of the painting, where you're essentially putting darkers in. We haven't got to the details or the accents that they do chop their stones out. The quarries are amazing. If you go walking around there, you see these great lumps. It's like, must be like the Carrera Mountains in near Pisa, which I've yet to visit, but all cut out of soft stone. So now my inclination is to just bring in some of the wall, not all of it here. So I'm running around it with my my rigger. So if you're painting along with me, I think you've probably got the gist of what I'm doing here. You make it up. A lot of these shadows will appear less strong, even less strong, when I put some darks around them a little bit later on. So I'm just bringing in some shadow tucked in around some of these plants. And I'm running out of paint, and I think I'm running out of inspiration to keep that. I just wonder if that's going to be enough. We can add some more later on when we see how the whole thing's looking. Yeah, I think I'll call that enough. Maybe do some more later on. We'll wait and see. Okay, this now is the last bit of the painting. It's an opportunity to bring in, I suppose you could call it detail, but it's sort of accents really, which will help to bring things to life, and we'll see whether it does that, shall we? So I'm going to, in the main, use dark colors. If I feel that I want to bring something in at the end of the painting, I'm just wondering how this is going to look when I brought in some colors. It might be that I want to touch in something here to change some of the colors of the stonework, or it might be that I don't need to. I'll wait and see. So I'm going to mix up a really dark color, and I'm going to quite often use it pretty dry. I will probably use my rigger and this sword brush. I don't think I'll be involved in a mop. We'll see. But first is I'm gonna mix up a really dark color. I'll do that. I'll mix it up with my mop because I might use that mop for doing this doorway that someone mentioned earlier. So I'm going for French ultramarine blue here, and burnt sienna. If I want the color to get even darker, then I've got neutral tint here, which I can add to it. Although I don't think I ever really use this color. Payne's Grey is a very similar color. I don't think I ever use this on its own. It's great for adding to colors, just if you want to get things really in much darker than you've got them here. So I do want a good, strong, thick color, those, whether I'll use it as like that all the time. And I think if necessary, I'll add the neutral tint to it. I'll work up here and downwards because I don't want to smudge things more than I have to. So I've got a really dark color here. It's not dark. It's not dark or thick enough yet. So let's add some more. With my paints, I resupply these pans from a tube. I would say the colors that I tend to use more than any other are French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, raw sienna maybe, uh, lemon yellow. Well, you can probably see which ones have got the biggest dents in them. Although I don't use this colour very often. I don't know if I've used it today, the manganese blue. There hasn't been a call for it. So, right, let's just start to make a few little marks, just to add a little bit more life to this. A little bit more life to making this. So we've got something up here.
Someone's asking where you buy your tubes from, Mike.
Well, if you buy them on the internet, they're going to be cheaper than if you go to an art shop. So the internet shops that I use mostly are Great Art, Jackson's. They're probably the two main ones I use. We have a really amazing art shop in Dorchester. It's nice just to go in there and spend a bit of time, but it is expensive, as are in all art shops, because it's a difficult business to for retail. So I'm just bringing a little bit of dark onto that. A few little marks as we go along. I think there's some steps here, but I don't know. I don't want to get too involved in that. By putting something dark in the shadow here, just suggesting, it doesn't really matter what it is, it's just making a suggestion of there being a difference between the two. And a few suggestive marks of brickwork just coming out of the shadows. Let's put this door in. Doorway. So these are kind of accents, really, just to emphasize I'm making that a little bit darker. I've just added some water there, so now I'm working my way around this picture. For those of you who are painting as we go along here, occasionally I'll add, as I've done here, I'll add a little bit of water to some of my dark colors. I'm trying to use the idea of the darks to help, for instance, bring that bush out, by bringing some bit more dark in there. So using them as compositional aids, really. It's got a few little windows in. Yeah. I am jumping around between my brushes a little bit. Let's and sometimes you'll find a little bit of paint that a paper you haven't painted. There's this little bit here. I'll just make a use of that for suggesting there's some shadow behind it. All right, let's put in a window. Right, I'll go to the palm trees now, and make sure I've got a bit of shadow color handy. And I'll use this sword brush. Here. Okay, and get some nice fine lines with this sword brush. So I'm trying to establish the dark areas of the palm tree, still leaving some of the greens showing through. Lost that window. Probably enough of that one. Let's have a look at this. So this is a good brush, this sword brush, holding quite a bit of paint in it, and you get some really nice fine lines. The same like sort of lines you get for a rigger, but it's probably holding a little more paint in it. We've got quite a lot of shadow here going on down into the into the trunk. I've run out of paint. Let's just mix up some. I haven't felt the need to add any neutral tint yet, but we'll see. Now, if you're using student quality paints, Cotman, things like that, you're really going to have to work hard to get some of this really strong color up. I'm just putting a bit of neutral tint in that, and a little bit more brown. See how that goes. Okay, come back to the moment. Let's see. I'm right. I'm going to I'm going to put a door in here. I think I was talking about putting a door in this house. Let's have a little door. And along the edge, which shows off the top of the wall, I'm quite keen to bring in some darks there to help to show off the light that's on the wall. So a few little marks here. Again, I don't know what the earth that is, but it's got a little bit of blue there. Right, and I'll move across around to this side. Where things are a bit closer to you, maybe you can think of having a little more detail. Keep that out of the way a bit when you're dealing with things that are meant to be further away from you. So a few little marks here. So I'm moving around the painting, as indeed many of you must be doing at the moment. I'm going to leave the foreground for the moment. Come back to that in a second. So if you put some dark in amongst the shadow, it just makes the shadow appear a little bit lighter, not quite so heavy. I think for the moment, I'm just finished with what's happening above the wall. I'm just going to play with the wall now. I want to try and do this as quickly and as light as I can. There are all sorts of little crevices which give you little darker marks, and so if we can put those in without overplaying our hand and leave some of the other shadows, the lighter shadows, doing their job as well. Let's see what happens. I'm working my way around the wall. We're doing very well with time, Lois, aren't we? Because I'll be finished in just a moment.
Marvellous.
Yeah. I've done most of this with my rigger. I used the sword brush for the palm tree. I found that quite useful. It'll be interesting to see what everyone's paintings look like when it's all over. If people send them in, that's really great to see them. I think we had 30 people sent their works in last time. Lois, I think you said.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
It's great to see them online.
Yeah. Right, this wall is still a little bit too pristine for so I'm just wondering, what about flicking a bit of paint at it. Let's have a look. Pick up a sort of brown sludgy, I think. Blocking off the rest of the painting, just, and wherever that's gone, rather arbitrarily, I'll just touch some of that in. Just a few marks. Right, I'm nearing the end of this. Let's just see, do I need to? And now I'm going to just take some sort of little, it's a sort of form of control flicking, if you like. I'm just going to take some marks around, particularly in the foreground, which might just mess up make the painting a little less tidy. What I want is this house, and I think we've got it standing out as the White House. Someone mentioned about using white paint, gouache, and if I do use it, I'll put it on right at the end. I'm just going to dry this. I can only think of one or maybe two places to put some white paint on this picture. And so I'm using it straight out of the tube. I use it as dry as I can get away with, and as little as I can get away with. And I think on that post, if you put it on white paper, of course, it won't achieve very much, but I'm going to put it there and something there. Suggest maybe there's some sort of a step. Not sure what that is. It's probably enough there. And there's nothing here that I really want to add white to. Letting the paper do its work. It's as much white as I'm going to put it on. Sometimes I'll use more than that, but whenever you do use it, you use it sparingly. It's otherwise it just looks very overworked. So I'm taking a look at my painting now and thinking, that's it. That's as much as I'm doing.